everything from fitness, good food, and all the stuff in between. Our goal with these talks is to give you some really good information to help you on your health, wellness, or fitness journey and give you some high value info. But there's also action items, but you have to stick around to the end for that. So make sure you stick around to the end for all the good action items.
Stick around to the end for all the action items. Yes, right. I am Brandon. If you're with us live on Facebook in our Just for Fun group, the Drop the Fat Not the Tacos group, or in our Clean Club group coaching group, give us a thumbs up. Tell us you're here. All that stuff. Yeah. If you're not in one of those groups and you're listening to our podcast, then I appreciate you. But I would love for you to be over here so you can be part of the conversation. You can watch these talks live and ask questions. Be part of the discussion.
Yeah.
So do that. Yes, do that. All right. So today I wanted to talk about how we measure our success.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah. How do we do that? This requires us to kind of look a little bit deeper, right? Look at what's underneath our goals, right? Like whenever I do a coaching consult, goals are obviously part of the conversation. And I pretty much hear this. Yeah, it's a big surprise. Shocking. Right? Like, nah, we just don't talk about goals. I'm pretty much hear the same thing though every time, and the same few things. I want to lose weight, right? I want to gain muscle, build strength. I want to be able to do X, Y, Z, which is one that I like. But there's nothing necessarily wrong with those things, right? Those are good things to want. Those are fine. But what about, when we think a little bit more deeply about these things and what we're ultimately after, like as humans, right? When we do that, we can relieve ourselves of some of the obsessions that we suffer from, right? Yep. And we can sort of reframe our values, and I think we want to, we want to look better or perform better because, right? Like, yeah. Why? It'll make us feel better. Right? Yeah. I mean, ultimately, right? We think anyway. Right. Like that's the one thing that'll make me feel better. And I feel like that's sort of the cart before the horse in a lot of ways. Ultimately, we want relief from a painful situation. Right? That's usually it. We want to live with the peace of mind, with peace of mind. Maybe it's, maybe you've had that recent, visit to the doctor, right? That, they had that serious conversation with you, or maybe you want to live without guilt, right? And you're just like, God, I'm like out of control with a certain part of my health, and you want to live without that guilt, without shame. We want to live with confidence and freedom from judgment. And most of the time that's from ourselves, but also from our peers, or so we perceive, right? So we think, right? But we want that, like, I'm strong, I'm healthy. Healthy is beautiful. Think what you want because I own my life. Like that's what most of us are after.
Yes, you nailed it. Absolutely, 100%. Now that you've said that, and we know what everybody's really going for, I'm going to ask you the question everyone is thinking.
Yeah.
How the hell do we get it, Brandon?
How the hell do we get it? How do we do that? You might be better at answering that than I am, because you really went through it, right? We went through that. When we started our coaching together, you had some goals that were, if we're being honest, mostly focused on appearances.
Mostly is generous.
Completely focused on appearance.
Pretty much all completely appearance.
And we always have to balance those, right? Like into what we do, right? Like that is, they don't just disappear because we start to think differently, right? That's a whole process.
Yeah.
So how has that changed for you?
Well,
ask you.
It was not a fast process. So if you're looking for something really fast and easy, this is not it. But that I know it's not fast. However, when we started, I just really wanted to like the way I looked when I looked in the mirror at myself. That's all I wanted. That's what I was interested in was looking better.
I'm totally going to jump in for a second.
Okay.
Because even that was underneath some layers, right?
Maybe.
I mean, I know like you've come so far from that initial conversation that even that feels, surface
Fair.
level probably. But at the very start, right? First thing you wanted.
I had a certain amount of weight I wanted to lose.
Totally. Yeah. And that's fine. Like everybody comes in with that, right?
Yeah, totally. And even in that first meeting, we dug into why I wanted to lose the weight. You didn't just go, okay, you want to lose X pounds? Great.
Boom, let's go.
Right. We dug into why I wanted to lose that weight, that I wanted to like how I looked, but I also wanted other people to look at me and I don't know how to put this. It makes me feel like I'm vain, but we all kind of want this, but I wanted them to look at me and like the way I looked instead of going, oh, she would be cute if she would lose X weight, or if she did this, or her face is cute, those sorts of things. All the stuff that we tell ourselves people are judging us for in public. I was absolutely obsessed with getting rid of fat, ugly Rebecca and having a revenge body. That's how I saw myself. And you remember, if you listen to this podcast, there's quite a few times where I talked about my rock hard abs that I wanted. And, I really wanted that because I was going home for a visit that summer. And I wanted to show everyone that if I looked awesome, everyone would think I was actually doing really well and everything was great and I would feel a lot better about myself. So even those things felt like really big breakthrough goals for me. But it took some time, plenty of crying.
There were tears.
There were a little bit of tears in there, and some tough questions that you asked me to realize that I really wanted to change how I felt more than anything else because I felt terrible.
Yeah. You were in a rough place. It was a hard spot. And to be clear, like, I know when we look at fit, people who, probably have what we want in a lot of ways, it's hard to like, the reaction is usually like easy for you to say.
Yeah.
Right. Because look at you. Right.
Just last week, somebody told me, oh, it's easy for you to say you can eat whatever you want. Nope, I can't.
Well, no,
really can't.
Cannot eat whatever I want. No. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
No, and that, that goal at the beginning, that weight goal was a lofty one. It was not a small, like, there's been big changes around here.
I think I lost a toddler at least.
But anyway, that conversation and that conversation really did.
See, I made you think for a second.
That conversation was just the start. Because essentially what you're saying there is that you wanted to love yourself and be free of judgment,
totally.
Right? And you were just still in that thinking that the only way to get that was to lose a specific amount of weight,
right,
or look a certain way,
right?
But we left it at that for a little while, right? Just a little change at a time, right? You guys hear me say that probably too much. Then a few weeks into our 12-week habit reset program, I remember a pretty significant shift in your goals and your thinking.
I remember too. And I had been doing a really great job of avoiding some foods that did not agree with my stomach and always made me feel crappy. Notice I didn't say bad foods. I said foods that didn't agree with my stomach or made me feel crappy.
We used to say bad foods.
We used to say bad foods.
The evil foods. Sure.
The things that, make you feel like crap either a couple hours after you eat them or the next day, I avoided those. And when I cut those things out of my diet, what happened? I all of a sudden had significantly less bloating, and I didn't realize how much of my weight was bloating. And I had more energy. I felt lighter. I just felt so much lighter. And that's really the only way I know how to put it. And it's really hard to explain. But once I realized how good, like it just felt so good to not be bloated. I didn't like the way that I looked still, but it felt so good to not be bloated and lethargic. And I didn't feel embarrassed when I went out in public as much as I used to. And I didn't feel fat or unhappy like I did. I just felt good because I was so happy about how good I was feeling that once I had that,
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? Let's chase those feelings. This is really great, is feeling good and being happy and proud of myself for what I'm doing, not upset about the things that aren't what I want and aren't going my way.
Totally.
Totally.
And it's funny, that little bit of positive feedback. I mean, it was pretty big. You were like, holy shit, like, I don't
Yeah.
like, I
This
can work
feels
out and this
great.
doesn't feel awful. Like, that's
Mhm.
pretty rad.
Yep.
But I remember when this clicked like really well, right? Because our next conversation was about the feelings you wanted to have, and you broadened your focus so much, and your measurables, you know, became really different too. So they included emotional feedback as well
Mhm.
as like physical feedback.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
That's big.
This is the exact moment when I started redefining what would bring me happiness, what would bring me that happiness, what that was, and what would bring me peace in my life.
Totally.
And I started finding, like I said, I could feel proud of myself for the things I was doing right and care less about what other people thought of me by doing things I was proud of. I was eating well, I was increasing my activity, and I knew those things were good for me. And rather than changing how I looked, I focused on how I felt and changed that on a daily basis.
Totally.
Yeah, it was
Totally.
great.
Which also made everything a much more positive
Yes.
experience for you in
Yes.
this, right?
Yes.
And then bonus.
I
Right.
know how I looked also changed.
Yeah,
Shocking. And, I didn't have to focus on it at all. I didn't have to try to change the way I looked. I focused on how I felt and doing things that made me feel good. And as I did that, the way I looked changed pretty quickly,
pretty amazing,
actually.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty incredible. Like
Yeah.
how when we focus
Mhm.
on the things we have control over,
Mhm.
how quickly we can start
Mhm.
like feeling so much better, right?
Mhm.
About ourselves, or at least more physically comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And then we get those little bonuses along the way, right, that help encourage
Mhm.
us to keep going. But
Yeah. It's so true. And I do want to be brutally, brutally honest for a moment, though, as we wrap things up in this arena, that it is really, really hard to describe this feeling. Like, I could spend
Yeah.
all day trying to explain to you what it feels like, and there's no words to describe what it feels like. I was just in Pennsylvania for a weekend, which notoriously is a challenge for me to eat there. And I even noticed this time around, my choices were different because I was going, do I want to feel bloated and gross? No, I don't. So I'm going to eat that salad instead. Making those choices based off of how I felt, not caring what I looked like. And I know, especially right now, there's a lot of people falling off the wagon from your New Year's resolutions, or maybe you're feeling a little defeated right now. And, the person who's been working for the last week, maybe a couple weeks or months or longer, that just isn't feeling it and doesn't see any progress, that you probably feel defeated and hopeless. And you may be listening to us going, how the heck do I get this feeling, Rebecca? Tell me the action. Tell me what to do. So let's talk about action, Brandon.
That is tough, man. Well, because this is right. We just spent this whole thing about, talking about mindset, and that's really what it is. I mean, part of me, a big part of it is just like any action.
Yep.
Right. Choose your action. Choose the thing you've been avoiding. Right. And that's where you start. But without, that's like a whole other that's
another talk.
Yeah. And maybe that goes on the ticket for next week, maybe. But this is a matter of mindset and values. Right. Values. If we never step back and look at what is truly important, like not just today, right, but in the years ahead of us, like, then if we don't do that, then we can never really, we can easily end up chasing meaningless things,
for sure,
right, or things that we think will solve our problems, but may not. Like, I often need to check myself and recognize that I'm overvaluing how my body looks, or how I want my body to look, and undervaluing what my body does for me, how it feels, how it performs, all this stuff. Like, I'm no spring chicken. I've got a lot of old injuries. Like, I need to really value how my body moves
Yeah.
and works. Because there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work the way it used to, man. My hands. Um, it's also important to practice acceptance, right? And I just want to put these words, like these ideas, into your head, guys. Like accepting that we can only do what we can do, and the rest is just right. The result is up to the universe or God, whatever you want to, whatever you want to call it. Like when we try to manufacture things, results that are ultimately out of our control, we literally sacrifice our sanity. Right? Refusing to accept the outcome of honest work destroys our peace.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that again. Refusing to accept the outcome of honest work destroys our peace. It does. So this is where gratitude comes in. I know this is another conversation. Practice it. Practice that. Yep. And you can start with the big stuff, and then whittle it down. I've had conversations with people that are like, they say, name 50 things that you're grateful for every day, right?
Every day.
50 different things. And that forces us to start paying attention to the small things that we have in our lives, the small things that we need to value. So yeah, practice that. And surrender to the honest process. Stop looking for shortcuts.
Yep, they don't exist.
Stop looking. No, they freaking do not. Stop looking for ways around the thing you need to do. Okay, accept that the change you want requires you to change your lifestyle, and it requires you to change that one thing that you're hanging on to, rather than doing a 6-week challenge. Temporary change equals temporary results, right? Anytime that we do any sort of challenge, there's a lot of follow through. There is a lot of talk and continued process beyond that. There's never any like, boom, you're done. Yay. You have, lost 30 pounds or whatever. And now you get to go back to doing whatever you were doing before that gave you the results you had before.
Yeah. I clearly went back to my old lifestyle as soon as we were done.
Yeah. Right. But the crazy part is that surrender is the only thing that you need at the start.
Yep.
Okay, so if I were to give you one thing, and I wish that I could give you like a concrete step, do this much cardio and stop eating this, boom. Like, no,
nope.
Find the thing that you need to face, the one thing, maybe two, that you need to face. Cut that thing into digestible pieces. Maybe that's a bad analogy. Cut that thing into manageable pieces. You're like, cheesecake. I can cut that into.
I can totally
digestible
cut cheesecake into pieces.
Because it is. That's what gives you the start, right? You take that one thing, that difference maker that you've been avoiding. Take the action, and the rest starts coming. You can get that little bit of feedback. So, yeah, again, I wish I could give you that one thing, like, do this, do that. That would be awesome. But this is super subjective. We all have that thing that we avoid giving up. That's the difference maker, right? And then, if you discover that you really are not willing to give that thing up, right? If that thing is worth it, then so be it. Now it's acceptance time.
Yep.
Right? And that's okay. That's all right. Like, I'm willing to live with a few pounds of extra on my body because I fucking love pizza. So that stays. But, ultimately, and then, okay, make peace with that.
Yep.
Make peace with that. And again, I know it's easy to, say from, as a guy who does this work day in and day out and, has made it part of his lifestyle. But please trust me and believe me when I say there are a lot of things that I need to work on acceptance around.
Yeah.
And that it is just a process, right? And I'm just talking and talking and talking.
It's all right. I like that. I think everything was well said, and it's always really hard to remind ourselves. And even myself, I'm 2 years after we did the 12-week habit reset, I'm still working on things. There are still things I have to overcome and that I'm struggling with. But the difference is I'm taking it one baby step at a time instead of trying to do all the things all at once and punish myself. These habits that got us here, where we are, that we don't like, whatever it is we don't like about ourselves, they didn't show up overnight. We weren't these perfect, healthy, fit human beings yesterday and woke up this morning, 50, 60, 80, 100 pounds overweight. It took time for us to get there. We developed those bad, for lack of a better word, habits that got us to this place. So we really have to be patient with ourselves if we want to make permanent, lasting change. That creating new habits is also going to take time. There's still things I'm mastering, still things I'm trying to figure out, but lots of things at this point that I feel accomplished that I don't have to stress about that anymore. Before we dive too much further into this, though, because we could talk about this for absolutely ever, Brandon, why don't you wrap us up and take us out? And you should come back and check us out next week so you can hear us talk more about this stuff, because we probably will talk about mindset again.
Yep, that's going to be happening. That is a long conversation.
Yeah. We won't talk about habits or that right now because we could talk about it forever.
Like, keep going. No. Okay, so stop. We'll pick that up. We'll pick that up next week. In the meantime, if you're watching or listening, drop those questions, drop your experience, please. Okay. Let your experience help other people. If you need help with some of this stuff, drop that in there as well. I know it's hard to be vulnerable, but being vulnerable helps not just you, but it helps the people around you as well. So, I encourage that, and I applaud you if you've done that, because I know it's not easy. But yeah, we care about you. We want to give you answers. So do that. We can't do it if you don't ask the questions. So
we're here for.
Yep. All right. And we love you. So keep being our awesome community. Keep lifting each other up. Keep reaching out if you need to be lifted up. And we will see you soon.